Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome to this week's lesson video, or should I say perspective video. I wanted to try a new format, see what you guys think. This is something to change out every now and then, just explore some different topics so it's not exclusively just guitar playing, and gives a bit more of my background, lessons I've learned over the years, and stuff that might be useful to you guys. Before we get into the lesson, I do want to say that the first few workshops are happening very, very soon. I'm doing some online Zoom workshops and opening some Facebook community groups that will be linked through that. The first English workshop is August 2nd, and the Spanish workshop will start August 9th, and then from there on out it'll be every 2 weeks. It's on a monthly basis, but please do check the video description. Yeah, check the description box down below. I'll have a link. It says workshops. You can go check it out there. All the information will be written there, and you can get in touch with me through there or through Facebook or Instagram if you're interested in signing up. I'd love to see you guys there. So let's get into it. Standards has always been interesting for me, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Partially inspired by the video I posted not too long ago on You Can't Go Home Again, which is a beautiful standard. I love ballads. And I thought it would be interesting to tackle this topic because I don't consider myself a standards player, at least not particularly. Even though I enjoy playing them, my primary focus has always been composing, performing my own music, and performing the original music of other people, or sometimes even helping them compose the music. That's been my primary focus since I got into working professionally as a musician. And not just that, but also coming at jazz from a different background. I didn't start out as a jazz musician. I wasn't exposed to jazz very early on. And actually I didn't quite gel with it in the beginning. I didn't take to it immediately. So I wanted to give a bit of my perspective on just stuff I've learned and maybe a few things to consider when you're in the process of working through it that might make it a little easier for you guys. So first things first, just a bit of backstory. When I was at Berkeley, I would always be in a position where I would try learn tunes, and I wouldn't feel particularly great about learning them. Sometimes I would get a little bored, or I wouldn't know where to start because the world is so big. There's such a huge repertoire. I would feel a little intimidated and a little confused as to where to begin. And when I would ask for advice, generally the piece of advice I was given was learn more tunes, which is probably the last piece of helpful advice you want in that moment. You probably want something that's a little more specific, but there is something to be said for learning tunes and the lessons you learn through the process of learning tunes. And I cover a bit of that process in a separate video. You can pause this one, go check it out, come back, or check that one out after you've watched this. Whatever works best for you. But there was even a story I have. It was in a lesson with Tim Miller, and I was feeling a little despondent. I wasn't feeling too great about my playing. And Tim said, okay, let's play through the tune you were working on for an audition. And I thought, okay, let's play. So within about half a chorus or a chorus, he figured out, you have no 2/5 vocabulary. And this came from not working on standards, because I wasn't really working on that. I was trying to craft an original voice. And this eventually led to me working on more tunes, and also Tim leaving me with a big piece of advice, which was learn more tunes. That was one of the pieces of advice he left me when I was graduating. So the process then kind of started, and the first 10 or 20 tunes was a bit of a slog. It was a bit slow, but eventually it started picking up speed and picking up steam, and suddenly I was learning more and more tunes, and eventually I was starting to enjoy it, and I was starting to notice some key shifts in my playing. So I wanted to talk about that. Some people have commented on it, but I wanted to at least offer what I found useful in learning standards. And it kind of, I'll break it down into melody, harmony, and language, let's say. Language or foundations, fundamentals. So when it comes to melody, I found suddenly my melodies became more melodic, not because I wasn't a melodic player, but because suddenly I was absorbing so much information, just deepening my reservoir of ideas, and incorporating so many melodic fragments or cells or whatever it may be, or just melodies in general, that eventually I would start having clearer statements. I would be able to make stronger musical statements, and some of these standards have such a timeless quality to them that people really relate to it, really relate to the melodic aspect. And especially knowing that a lot of these standards are old songs, they have lyrics to them. It kind of helps you get into the music a little more. Now, would I say I know the lyrics to every standard I've learned in my life? Probably not. But just really getting inside the melodic aspect helped change my playing and my composition. Now, we also get into the harmonic aspect. And one thing I started to find was that I began to consider the harmony as a whole in the context of the tune. I wasn't looking at it in a very chord scale perspective, as in this chord has this scale, this chord uses this scale, this uses this. I was starting to figure out the relationships. How does this chord lead to the next one? What's the relationship between that? How does this chord relate to the previous one? How does this section relate, harmonically speaking, to the A section? How does the B relate to the A? Have we modulated? Are we still in the same key? Or is it drawing from elements of the A section? How does it lead back to the A section? I was starting to develop a more complete view of the tune, harmonically speaking. And this is great for functional harmony, which most of the great American songbook tunes are. And this would also translate to non-functional harmony, because let's say, I don't know, tunes like So What or Inner Urge, or even maybe some Wayne Shorter tunes, the chords may not necessarily have a direct relationship to one another, but from the work you've done on standard repertoire, you'll start figuring out, how can I connect this chord to the next in a very smooth fashion? This applies to your comping and your linear playing. So you find your playing has much more focus and direction after working on standards for a bit. And then the last point I want to consider that really helped me was getting into language, not just language in the sense of soloing language to how you navigate the changes and how you sound convincing in the style, but incorporating the style. I mean, the language is in the melodies. The little melodic devices that are particular to jazz are in jazz melodies. And this process can also be extracted to work in any other genre. If, let's say, you want to be a great flamenco guitar player, or you want to learn Brazilian music, or you want to dive into Latin America, or dive into African music or Indian music, whatever it may be, where would you start? You would look at the seminal repertoire, the tunes that are very important, or the music that is very important within the genre as a starting point, learn some of that music, have references to recordings of people who play that music well, and extract ideas from key performers in the genre to start influencing your musical vision, which helps in integrating a style. So if you want to incorporate more of a jazz element into your playing, or you want to dive headfirst and be a jazz musician, standards playing and learning standards and having a deep repertoire is going to help you no matter what level you're at. Now, I do want to touch on some things that I think might alleviate some fears or might just take a little bit of the pressure off. Sometimes I think with jazz academia, or as teachers we can tell students, you have to learn this tune. And maybe the student doesn't enjoy the tune. Maybe they don't relate to the music, or they haven't been exposed to it, and as such they're not really enthused about it, or they have some worries. So first things first, to someone learning a tune, yes, you will probably have to learn some tunes that you might not like. especially because there are a bunch of tunes that are important to the music and you do need to know them. However, at least try and make the process enjoyable. Check out recordings or do a dive into some recordings that you like. And maybe if you're coming at it from a more modern or a more contemporary school because you didn't grow up with it, maybe you'll find that one of your favorite modern musicians has interpreted a standard in a way that's maybe a little more accessible to you. And then you can work your way down the lineage. Or maybe you want to dive in head first, but the principal version your teacher told you to check out doesn't resonate with you. Maybe there's someone from that same time period and that same era, or maybe the one after that, that has done an interpretation of that standard that you can check out. The point is, find a recording that resonates with you and that you really love and extract the information from it. The next piece of advice I would say is don't feel like learning standards is going to impact your creativity. Don't feel like learning standards is going to make you a standards player. By no means is that going to happen. It's going to, if anything, influence your creativity and just amplify your understanding of music and just broaden your vision so that when you take on some new ideas, eventually once you've absorbed them and integrated some of these tunes, they start coming out and you're playing in interesting ways. Why? Because it's still being filtered through the musical lens you developed being exposed to whatever style of music you were exposed to. For example, I started out with classical music, then went to rock and then metal, and then somehow ended up at fusion, and then got to jazz, or whatever I seem to be playing these days. But you will filter all this information through your own musical lens. So don't feel like you're going to become robotic or anything in any way. You will find a musical way of interpreting the music and making it your own. And lastly, I want to say, do not feel any pressure. There is no pressure to learn all the tunes in the world, to have a list of 300, 400 tunes, unless that's your goal. If you want to have all the tunes in the Great American Songbook down and know the real book back to front, although probably not the best place to learn tunes, but if you want that as your goal, then yes, your goals will differ slightly and you might have to be a little tougher on yourself and push yourself a little harder. But if you're just looking to get into jazz, start with tunes you love or start with tunes you really like. And if everyone around you, let's say, is learning tunes at a rapid fire clip, don't feel like you need to keep up. Focus on really integrating the tunes you're learning well. Obviously, still push yourself where possible. Try not to get too comfortable and say I'm working on this one tune for ever. But take your time in really absorbing it and enjoying the process. And yeah, working on tunes you love. I think after a while I developed a pretty solid list of tunes, and eventually I got to the point where I thought, I really just want to learn tunes that I love. And I started taking that outlook after I'd got a pretty solid repertoire where I could survive in most situations. And I found I was enjoying the process a lot more. And I found ideas starting to come into my playing a lot more naturally. I wasn't forcing anything. But needless to say, don't feel pressured, relax, enjoy the process. It'll make it that much easier to integrate everything. So, I hope this little video was useful and interesting for you guys. If you like the format, please do let me know in the comments. I might do more of these, and if you have specific topics or questions or perspectives that you want me to maybe talk about, I'd be happy to do a video on it if it seems like a really interesting topic I could talk about for a bit. As always, please do like and subscribe. It really does help the channel grow, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.